Halloween was particularly scary for fantasy managers as we found out that Derrick Henry is likely to miss the rest of the regular season with a possible Jones fracture. So what do we do with that information? In this video, I'll look at what fantasy managers with Derrick Henry can do, as well as next steps for fantasy managers without Derrick Henry based on who might see a boost in value. So make sure you hang around for both parts of that. Obviously, to start, managers with Derrick Henry are not going to get anybody to replace Derrick Henry. Henry had the most rushes and touchdowns of any back in the NFL by a pretty large margin. He played 71% of total running back snaps for Tennessee and handled 84% of the team's total rushes. Tennessee is highly unlikely to replace that with one player, but the player on the roster most likely to see a drastic bump in work is Jeremy McNichols. Considering Darrynton Evans is out for the rest of the season, McNichols is the only other running back on the team to have received a carry so far this year. McNichols was also a good prospect himself coming out of Boise State. He had a 91% college dominator ranking, which was partially due to being third in the country in rushing TDs and sixth in rushing yards in 2016. He has good balance and hits his cuts hard, running with good power for his size. He's also a strong receiver out of the backfield with reliable hands, which led to 51 receptions as a sophomore. I actually believe McNichols could be a pretty good running back if given the opportunity. He wouldn't have the full rushing share that Derrick Henry did, but the passing game work does elevate his floor, since he would have his own passing game work plus Derrick Henry's little passing game work to have more receiving work than Derrick Henry likely ever saw. However, I don't actually think the Titans will just roll with Jeremy McNichols. Reports are that they're bringing in Adrian Peterson for a visit, and there are some trade rumors around Marlon Mack. Given any new addition would also have to learn the Titans' scheme, I would expect a split backfield at best, with McNichols still keeping the passing down work. If I roster Derrick Henry, I'd be sure to put in a pretty sizable bid for McNichols. We're not sure what type of role he's going to have, but given his passing down work, I think he has a pretty good role in the Titans offense going forward, and that's not something you can say about a lot of running backs that are available on waiver wires. I also think if you have Henry on your team, you can put in small bids for Adrian Peterson and Marlon Mack just in case, but we're recording this on Monday, so by Tuesday with waivers, you probably have more information to work off of in that regard. However, whoever the Titans bring in, I don't expect them to take the passing down work from McNichols, so that is something to keep in mind as you're doing your bids. If you have Derrick Henry on your team, you're most likely treating his running back spot like a running back streamer, mix and matching with the guys you have on your bench based on their schedule to find the best possible outcome every single week. If you do not have Henry on your roster, I'd really be looking to put an okay size bid on McNichols around 15% of your fab. I think he likely winds up as more of a flex play, even though he does have running back number 2 upside if he were to take the full rushing share of the Titans. I just don't really see that happening. I also wouldn't really prioritize Mack and Peterson, as I think their upside is severely limited even if they did sign with the Titans for their lack of passing down work. Before we dive into which players should see a benefit based on this injury, I'd like you to pause the video, comment below, let me know which running backs you might be picking up to replace Derrick Henry, or ask any questions you might have about the situation. Now going forward, I do think the biggest beneficiaries in Tennessee are options in the passing game. We have a small 3-game sample size for the Titans without Derrick Henry since he's been in the league, but they do become a more pass-heavy team. They also did have DeMarco Murray in those games, so we could expect the running numbers to be a little bit smaller this year. I think we can expect the Titans offense to shift, much like the Ravens offense has. In 2020, the Ravens had the highest rush percentage in the league at 57.8%. That number's dropped to 47% in 2021, with Lamar Jackson accounting for 36 of that total. The Titans being more pass-heavy would be great news for A.J. Brown, who's had over a third of the team's targets over the past 3 weeks, catching 25 passes for 379 yards and 2 touchdowns. That makes him the number 2 receiver in half PPR scoring over that time. Obviously, without Henry, defenses can key on stopping Brown a bit more, but I expect him to remain a wide receiver 1 for the rest of the season. I also expect Ryan Tannehill to go back to being a surefire QB1, much like last year where he ended the season as QB7 overall. The Titans will rely on him to throw more, which will lead to higher passing totals, but I also expect Tannehill to be asked to use his legs more, especially in the red zone, where Tannehill is the only Titans player other than Henry to have a rush this season. I also think this makes for a good buy low opportunity for Julio Jones. The veteran has been battling a hamstring injury, which may keep him out another week or so, but that injury is exactly why fantasy managers may not want to roster him anymore. However, Julio is playing 80% of snaps when healthy, and if he comes back to that role on a Titans team that needs to pass more, he could wind up as a solid wide receiver 2 that we all drafted him to be. Lastly, For tight end desperate fantasy managers, I think this could make Anthony Firkser a thing in deeper leagues. Despite his snap count dropping over the last 3 weeks, Firkser has still been running the most routes of any tight end and seeing a similar target share, while Geoff Swaim is mainly there to block. If there's one tight end that the Titans would turn to pick up work in the receiving game, it's likely going to be Firkser. I hope this video helped navigate a tricky situation. Just know that there will be many more like this that pop up during the fantasy season, so make sure you click that subscribe button below to get all of our Rotoballer content to help you through these fantasy pitfalls and minefields. Good luck the rest of the way.